All right, Alpha. Lead us off.
What episode is it?
16?
I
17?
think so. We're pushing into the 20s, man.
Welcome to the next episode of Myths and Stories.
There we go.
With tonight's topic, the Book of Sorrows. Take it away, Myth and Zor.
It's so generic, too. So we have no
I love it. I love it. No, every episode will now just be the next episode.
The next episode.
And then
We're
just
not
don't
even
have to
counting
worry
anymore.
about it.
There
Just
you
don't have
go.
to count. We're beyond numbers.
We've evolved beyond numbers. So this is going to be a long one. This is going to be like a 16-parter.
One. You
Myth-
say that,
Myth-
but maybe so.
It might actually be like Myth proposed this idea to me last week because Destiny right now is kind of in that it's in that weird state, right? Like there's not really a ton to do right now, and everyone's kind of that anticipation is getting built up for the 30th anniversary, and then, of course we got the holidays coming soon, so Thanksgiving coming up, and then Christmas, and so there's Destiny right now is in that weird like it's not really front page stories for everyone, and so we've been kind of having a hard time figuring out what topics we wanted to cover, and then Myth proposed either the story of Dredge and Yor, which we will definitely cover. But then I was like, ooh, that'd be super exciting. But then he made the mistake of suggesting the idea of Book of Sorrows and Oryx and the Taken and the Hive. Like I'm in love with that stuff. So as soon as he mentioned that's where it was like, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and it's a little more relevant to what's going on right now, considering Book of Sorrows is the origin of the Hive, including Savathun and Xivu Arath, and kind of their escapades prior to our meeting and becoming aware of them in the in-game story being told.
Would we consider this like when obviously we're trying to tell a story? You think of a story as a beginning, a middle, and end. Would we consider this the beginning of the Destiny universe? Is that kind of an inaccurate statement, because technically there is no beginning to it? Like it's the Destiny universe is supposed to be concurrent to our present day universe, whereas like the Traveler just showed up on Mars and we saw it on the news and everyone was freaking out type thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily consider this the beginning of the Destiny universe. I would consider the beginning of the Destiny universe to be the I believe it's the Unveiling book, which is where we talk about the gardener and the winnower, and the literal creation of the universe.
Okay.
So I consider that to be the true beginning.
I can agree with that 100%.
I would absolutely say this is the beginning of the Hive in the Destiny universe, though.
Right, because they weren't always Hive.
They were not. They had a different name, which we are going to go through a little bit of that history as well in the intro, the first portion of the Book of Sorrows here. And for anyone that's not already familiar, the Book of Sorrows is essentially the Hive Bible. It's even written very similarly, where the different chapters are referred to as verses, verse 1-0, verse 1-1, verse 1-2, so on and so forth. And it's kind of an intermixture of like Hive proverb type stories, like you'd see in the Bible, and a actual like written diary or written messages from Oryx. So you get some things that will be from Oryx's point of view that he is supposedly writing from his perspective, and then others that will be kind of more overarching stories that refer to Oryx and his sisters in the third person, that are more in that like proverb kind of feel. So
cool. And now as far as the Book of Sorrows themselves, where did all this information come from? Is this all through like ghost fragments from D1? Is this stuff that's just been found in the wild? Like where did this information come from?
Yeah, so the Book of Sorrows came from two different areas. And say the first of which is buying the Grimoire anthology on Amazon. No, I say in game, we discovered them through, I believe it was the calcified fragments that were spread throughout the Dreadnought.
Yeah. And if you can't find it there, go to Bungie.com. Go to Bungie.net/store, and you can find more. I think it was like, go to your local library. Yeah. We don't have no promo codes here. Get the hell out of here.
There's no affiliate links.
Myth and Zori 20. Get 20% off your next purchase. Oh, shit.
If only.
I wasn't ready for that. I was not ready for that at all. Continue.
So, I am currently going to be reading from the hard copy, the Grimoire Anthology. I think it's got a little bit of extra info in here.
I think you're right. I think the hard copy has, because I couldn't remember if it was, because when you buy one of them, you also get a electronic copy of it, and one of the two of them had like a series or something like that.
Yeah, so I don't remember if this one had extra entries or not. Even if it doesn't, I'm still going to read it this way because it has pictures and it gives me something to look at. So
yeah. Well, and another interesting note before we dive in, part of the book was also part of the puzzle from Shadowkeep, from the Shadowkeep cryptolith from the collector's edition. So it came with a puzzle box in the shape of a cryptolith, and when you got the dials to line up just right, it would open up, and there was a code inside, and the code gave you a picture, and the picture turns out there were literally hundreds of thousands of pictures, and when you started overlaying them on top of each other, they created words. And so obviously the Bungie community and their love of puzzles, they got all of the pages put together, and it's literally, I think it's like verse 5 or something like that. I don't remember exactly which verse it is specifically, but it's all Oryx and his sayings and stuff, and that's what led a lot of people to believe that, not believe, but kind of get onto the idea of when Shadowkeep happened. Now we're getting back into the Oryx, or the. Do they have last names?
No.
Do we just call them the Hive sisters?
Essentially, yeah.
So Xivu Arath, Savathun, and Oryx, and that's what people to realize, like this is going to be a major thing moving forward. And that's been almost 2 years now since the release of Shadowkeep.
Yeah, I think that's right.
We're just now kind of starting to get. I say we're just now starting to get. Obviously, we've had all the seasons where Savathun is in Ztories and playing the scenes from behind the curtain. But yeah, So go ahead and rock and roll with it, Myth.
Alrighty. So we are going to start at the beginning of the Book of Sorrows, verse 10, titled "The Fundament." Dearest sister, it's taken me 2 years, a quarter of our lives, but I've found the proof. We aren't native to the fundament. Our ancient ancestors came here to hide. The plate of stone we live on, our osmium court, is one fragment of a rocky planet that crashed into the fundament and broke apart. All the other nearby continents, the helium drinkers, the bone plaza, the star cutters, came from the same world. Perhaps the other races of the fundament are migrants too. We live on the shrapnel of our homeworld, floating on an ocean deep inside a gas giant. That's what fundament must be, a titanic gas planet. The endless storm above us must be one layer of the atmosphere, and the sea we float on. There's more down beneath it, so much more. You understand what this means, Savathun. The timid truth is a lie. We aren't meant to be the world's prey. We weren't born to live and die in the dark. we have a better destiny. Tell our father, Sister Sathona, this is the proof of his life's work. With love, for your second birthday, your first surviving sister, Orash.
So that, like,
there's
obviously
a whole lot of info there.
Whole bunch of info there. Fundament itself, being a gas giant, so large that other planets have crashed into it.
And broken apart.
And become essentially floating islands.
It become continents, yeah. And I don't know if they mean literal islands, like it's dotted with a bunch of islands, or if they mean that they're floating continents in the same way that like our globe is technically
well, how we have like tectonic plates on top of a mantle of so that that's because I guess, do we have a really good understanding of what is a gas giant? I don't know how far we've looked. The closest gas giants we have in our solar system to study are obviously Jupiter and Saturn, and even them, there's still not a whole lot we know about them.
I don't think so. Now, granted, I have not done. I am not in a profession that knows much about them, and I have not done any independent research on gas giants prior to this. But my just layman's understanding is that they are made of gas, with the exception of I do believe I remember reference of there is no solid land, or it's theorized there's no solid land in gas giants, that if there's anything other than gas, it's just liquid as you get closer to the center. That's
kind of mind-blowing, because that says a lot of things about the physics of a gas giant as well. Like obviously mass being part of gravity, and something having a lot of mass being very dense would cause it to have a greater gravity, because it has more, particles per square inch, whatever, however you want to measure it out. So the fact that I take it when I think of Fundament, and with it having that liquid layer, I think these continents are literally floating. I think that whatever planet that these creatures started from, that bumped into Fundament, or slammed into it, or however it connected with it, collided with it, and broke apart into many different continents. I think that those are actual literal floating continents.
Yeah, it would make sense that way. So the things that I want to take away or highlight in particular in this first entry, I say first is some names. So the sister of the author, Sathona, is mentioned here, and the author's name, your first surviving sister, Aurash. So those two names are important. We'll have to remember those if you haven't already keyed into who they may be. And the other bits of info here that are interesting, it's taken me 2 years, a quarter of our lives, but I've found the proof. So this particular race of beings lives for 8 years.
That's
which is incredibly short.
Right.
I mean, I guess, that whether that's short or not is all relative, compared to an insect that's still, forever.
Right. And then compare it to a tree that lives for hundreds of years, right? That's
right. That's
or a moon or a planet that's lived for billions of years. Like that's a blip of a blip.
But to us, it's a short amount of time. Yeah. And the author, Orash, has discovered that they are not native to this planet. That their original planet crashed into Fundament and broke apart. And they, as well as these other continents, the Helium Drinkers, the Bone Plaza, the Star Cutters, all came from this crashed planet. And why that is important to the author, as well as the person that they're addressing the letter to, Sathona, is that this means that it sounds like they are the weakest race on this planet right now. They are the prey species. And this is validation for them that they are not prey on their world because they were meant to be. They are prey on this world because it's not their home, is kind of the feeling.
Yeah.
They aren't weak because they were born to be weak. They're weak because this is not where they're supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, and the I have to laugh because they say 2 years, that being a quarter of our lives. We are taking that as a sense of an Earth year.
True.
Like
That's
that.
true.
It's interesting to me that even as and I get from a writer standpoint of view, like you can't. It's hard to equate some type of time and to try to say like this is a relevant amount of time to something. And so, like to me, I'm like, okay, well, 2 years, is that 2 Earth years? Is that 2 fundament years? Is that 2 whatever the planet they came from years? Like what is that? What does that equate to in days and hours and weeks and minutes for us?
Well,
and
I
that's
think,
where.
I was gonna say, I think in this case, we can take that to be our years.
Absolutely, no, yes, 100% with the it is written in the sense of Earth years. I just found it interesting that was the reference of time that was used, only for a sense that that's the only way that we as humans have a way to reference anything.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is it may not have originally been written in that format, but in
Right.
game when we receive these, it's translated by the ghost. So
Right.
Presumably
the ghost is very much like is the ghost a type of universal translator? Because it reads Hive and Fallen and Elixni and Cabal stuff all the time, and when we're playing in game, all we hear is a series of grunts or clicks. And Ghost very much relays information to us from that.
I don't know if ghosts are universal translators in the way that, like, a babblefish is. Where it just does it. Like, it just makes it understandable. I think ghosts inherently can translate because they've been around long enough to have truly developed an understanding, or at least a basic understanding of the languages.
Gotcha.
Our ghost,
it's more of like a database. It's more like a database understanding rather than a, I see a writing and I'm referencing a database, and all of this is happening in nanoseconds because it is a highly sentient energy signature, as Glint let us know.
Yeah.
But it's not a true, like, hey, I speak Mandarin because I've studied Mandarin for 60 years.
Right. Ghost kind of gives us a very high-tech version of Google Translate, is kind of how I've always viewed it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Doesn't necessarily get all of the, like, cultural cues, is not fluent per se, but can get the rough idea.
Yeah.
And the other thing for Hive in particular, if we assume everything that happened in D1 is canon, our ghost has downloaded the entirety of the World's Grave. So they probably have a little more understanding of Hive.
He's got to have something. Else. Wow, I never even made that connection, but he absolutely has. So he's got to have the entire archive. He's got to have everything that the Hive have ever written or recorded in history.
Presumably, although we have not heard of the World's Grave referenced since, so maybe it's kind of been retconned out at this point. But
poopy.
But yeah, so as that leads us to the next verse, which is verse 1:1, titled "Predators." And now this is more, still written from the perspective of this Orosh. However, is not a letter. It's more of a kind of defining their world. So it goes as such. Predators and menaces, carved to endure by Zero, third surviving sister of the Osmium King's last brood. Excuse me, it was not Arash, it is Zero in this case. A storm joy. A storm joy is a living cloud. When it passes over our continent, it lowers its feeding tentacles. On each tentacle are the bait stars. Although light makes you happy, you must avoid it. You will be eaten. A storm joy is a good way for an old person to choose death. Also, a daring knight can cut the bait stars from the tentacles. I have 6. Falling. If you fall off the edge of the continent, you will die in the ocean. This is a special hazard when our father, the Osmium King, uses the engines. Helium drinkers. The currents of the Fundament Ocean bring us near other continents. The Helium Court is near us now. They are of our species, but they are our enemies. Their knights raid us every day. Helium drinkers have 2 legs, 2 arms, and 3 eyes, just like us, but they are bright and evil. I want to be a knight and fight them. The Helium drinker ambassador ate 10 of my sister's tribute. This is normal. However, I resent it. Mothers. Mothers can fly. They live much longer than 10 years. Mothers are extremely smart, and they guard their spawn. If you try to tamper with the eggs, they will eat you. Sathona wants to eat the jelly and become a mother when she turns 4. Storms. The rain is often poisonous. Sometimes it dissolves the flesh. When lightning misses the lightning farm, it can vaporize a person. This entire world is deadly to us. Mysteries. The fundament is very large. We are the smallest things in it. If you don't understand something, it will probably kill you. My teacher, Taux, says this is why we have such short lives, so we can breed and adapt quickly. Moon waves. My sister Arash is afraid of moon waves. When she gets back from her expedition to the tungsten monoliths, I will ask her why. So this one, we get a little more world building about
I was
fundament.
going to say, right off the bat, we get a confirmation. They are floating islands.
Yep, they're floating islands that apparently they have the technology to attach engines to move.
Yep.
Which is kind of an interesting idea. So
they know enough about their little rock, their island, their portion of fundament to know that it's movable, that it's there are other portions of that rock that have other races on it, that the other races are exactly like them. They look like them. They're just slightly different. They're bathed in light.
Well, the helium drinkers at least look like them.
Okay, yeah, that's a good distinction.
We don't have confirmation of the others. And all it says they are bright.
They are bright. Okay.
And evil. So I don't know exactly what bright means. If bright means literally like their skin is a brighter color, they're more fluorescent, or maybe whereas the osmium core is
could be in the dark part of
gray.
Of the
these
moon,
guys are
so
green,
it's very much,
or something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I always took it. Me, when they start talking about bright and dark and light and dark and that it, my mind instantly goes to the two forces, the two paracausal forces of destiny, the light and the dark. And so in my head, I instantly reference that as, okay, well, they've got to be using light. And so this is their first interaction of light. But the fact that they're just saying that they're brighter, I didn't even think of even like an environmental thing, like, they're more fluorescent so they can see better in the dark or something like that. Like deep water fish, right? That fluoresce to be able to see, because the light just can't reach that. So that's an interesting point there to think of too.
I don't think they're directly referencing light or dark yet at this point in the Book of Sorrows. However, there are a few passages here that may or may not have intentionally been references, but I think could be applied as references now. So from the first verse, from the fundament, we have Orash saying, "We weren't born to live and die in the dark." That could literally mean, we could take that, knowing what we know, as Orash, who is just going to be easier to say this, is Oryx, is saying, we are not born to live in the dark. We are not born to have the dark decide our fate.
I was going to say, are we talking dark the entity? Are we talking dark the place? Are we talking dark the tool?
Well, in this case, it's not capitalized, so I don't think they're referencing the dark directly in that passage, because Orash would not know what the dark is at this point.
Right, exactly.
But from us outside looking in, I would see this as dark the entity, dark the force, I guess.
I would think of it more of as a dark the place.
Maybe so.
Like
Maybe
the void of light, like just the nothingness in between planets and stars.
Yeah, and we see kind of a slightly different view on things, whereas Orash is saying we are not born to live in the dark, live and die in the dark. The very next verse we have Xivu saying, although light makes you happy, you must avoid it. You will be eaten. So Xivu is showing a very she believes the light to be trickery. She believes light to be bad, even if it makes you feel good. And again, neither of them at this point are talking about light or dark as the Guardians know them.
Sure.
But I think we could still kind of go, maybe that's a hint, Well, maybe this is where some of their initial opinions formed.
Right. Yeah. Oh no. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. To where they see light as bad, and so when people start referencing the light, they've just they are now equating it to something that they have referenced before, and that's so in their minds they're like, oh well, they're referencing the light. The light is bad. We don't like the light. Yeah. So that means that we like the dark, and it's an interesting type of binary thinking there, right? Like, if I don't like the light, I inherently like the dark. Like, I have to like the dark. It's not like I can't like both, or I can't like neither.
And I think we're seeing some difference of opinion, because Xivu claims to
even between the sisters,
yeah, because Xivu isn't even saying that she likes the dark, but she's saying she does not like the light. And
interesting.
Orash is not saying that they don't like the light, but she is saying that she does not believe they belong in the dark.
Interesting.
So it's one of those, like, because of one, they don't, because they don't like one, it doesn't necessarily mean they like the other. But
interesting.
Right now,
it's definitely not at this point in time, it's not
a universal thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the first passage, Orash says, tell our father this is proof of his life's work. So it sounds like the king of the Osmium court, Orash's father, also believes that, like, they are not destined to be in the dark and be the prey to this planet.
Well, and it's interesting to me to think of this praetor type of reference, because anytime I think of it as in a food chain type reference of, prey is at the bottom, predators towards the top. And obviously, along that chain, some predators are prey to something else, until you come to the very top, the apex predator, which has nothing above it. But it's I don't think that they're thinking of it like that. I think that they are thinking of it as, like, they don't want to be they because they are not of that planet. They are not. Prey really is the best word to describe it. But they're not subject to the planet itself. Like, anything that the planet does to try to kill them or move them along evolution or anything like that. They are not inherently supposed to be part of that design. They are.
They're kind of an invasive species in some ways. Although maybe that isn't the most correct term, but they evolved for a different environment, and their species ended up here however many millennia ago, on what was the husk of what was their original planet.
We don't know how long that their planet has been there on Fundament. We did like all we have is this current reference of, it's taken me 2 years to come to all this conclusion of this is what's going on
the
here.
Evidence that we are migrants essentially. The other thing that I think is interesting in verse 1:1 is the talk of mothers. Mothers can fly longer than 10 years. They're extremely smart and guard their spawn. Sathuna wants to eat the jelly and become a mother when she turns 4. So this is direct relation to the Witch Queen trailers.
Absolutely.
So Sathuna is Savathun. Spoilers. If you didn't figure that one out yet, I don't know how to help you. And in the Witch Queen trailers, she has wings. And if she wanted to become, a mother way back when, before she was all, Witch Queenie, it sounds like maybe she figured out a way to get her wish. And if I really want to draw some parallels, she is kind of mother to the Hive Guardians, the Lucent Brood.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
She literally created them. So I wonder if some of her motivations are rooted in her juvenile desire, not juvenile, her childhood desire to become one of these mother figures.
I was going to say that, or her non-Hive desires.
Yeah.
Because has it said what the name of this race is?
It hasn't yet, but I'd figure we can. They're referred to as the Krill right now,
and I think of the Krill as very much like an insect-like race. Like
I would say so, yeah.
It's kind of interesting to me too to think of the races of Destiny, and like the Fallen are very much the Elixni as a whole are very much an insect-like race. Like they even the way they scurry about the ground, the Vandals and the Marauders and stuff, they scurry like insects, and it's weird to me to think that multiple species outside of the human species are very insect-like, but that's a very like space sci-fi thing, right? Like any type of sci-fi any type of sci-fi related genre, there are a lot of insect-like creatures as species throughout them. So it's not completely unheard of or just a foreign idea, but it's it's interesting that they're both of the insect type.
Two points on that. One, I can absolutely see the Fallen described as insectoid. I mean, it even says insect like chattering in some of the discussions with Varix and whatnot.
Absolutely.
I have also heard, and I can see how people would make the comparison of them with a like crustacean versus insect.
Okay. Sure.
Similar exoskeleton, multiple eyes, those kind of things. So I could see it being either or. But it's
and what is space but the grand ocean, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, nothing more unexplored than space. Space and our oceans. But the other thing is, from an insectoid race becoming a prominent species on a planet, not not unheard of even if we're looking at Earth. I mean, for anyone that hasn't already been told, insects on Earth outnumber us like millions to one.
Oh, easily.
uh,
I mean, if you don't believe that for a second, go in your backyard and find an anthill.
Yeah, essentially.
There are literally billions in there.
If we were to believe that, if and given enough time, insects were to evolve a higher form of intelligence that eventually over millennia, what we consider human level intelligence, that would be a possibility that I think is not all that far flung, especially if you think it happened on a planet where a mammal presence never existed.
Yeah. And that comes down to that food chain thought, right? Like that prey versus predator deal. Like if there is nothing above you, you are inherently the apex predator of that planet. Like if there was nothing there that was defeating the krill, that was feeding off of the krill, then the krill were inherently the most intelligent life on that planet, and therefore are the apex predator of that planet.
Yep. So we're gonna move on to the next verse here. Verse 1-2, the hateful verse. And this is written by none of the sisters. This is actually written by the mother, the teacher that was referenced in the previous verse. So, for the consideration of the Helium court, written in desperation, this sealed secret. And remember the Helium court being the Helium drinkers, who are the Osmium court's enemies. I am Taux, sterile mother, teacher to the children of the Osmium throne. As a mother, I live long. As a neuter, I can rise above the small battles of court politics. I alone see the patterns of survival. Alone I designed the great engines that move the Osmium court. Now, alone I must act to save my kingdom. Senility. Senility? Senility.
Senility?
Senility? Yeah, that one.
Senilality?
Yeah. He gone crazy.
He gone crazy.
Has claimed my lord the Osmium king. He is 10 and mad. The study of ancient text consumes him. Today he raves about storm. Tomorrow he will wander the hall, speaking to his familiar, a dead white worm from the deep sea. He keeps it in a glass, and he tends to it, and he neglects the duties of a king. The Osmium king has 3 surviving heirs, each 2 years old. Xivu, the youngest and bravest, who wants to be a knight. Sathona, most clever, who wants to be a mother. And Aurash, navigator child, who dreams of the infinite ocean. Tomorrow she will return from the tungsten monoliths. None of these are suitable heirs. None of them will protect the Osmium court from the howling fundament. Xivu can fight, but not lead. Sathona can think, but not fight. Aurash's curiosity will draw her away from duty. I fear for all future children. Soon the Osmium king will lock himself into the royal orrery to study the moons. Gather your knights, O Helium drinkers, and invade our continent. Kill the 3 heirs. I will rule the Osmium court as your regent and build engines for you. And if I fail, let the Leviathan in the deep eat me. Written in grief, this hateful request. Taux, Osmium mother, neutered to watch.
Holy cow.
We get some some information on the personalities of these 3 sisters, as described by Taux here, as well as some of Taux's kind of motivations. So
yeah.
The first thing we learn, Tauix, by nature of being a mother, has a long life for some reason. For some reason, mothers, those that become mothers, live much longer than the others.
Well, and not just that, she's a sterile mother.
Right. So
That's the point that keeps like bugging me a bunch. Like, what caused her to go? Is this a forced sterilization? Is this after having so many broods you can't reproduce anymore? Like, what is?
It is interesting. Maybe she became a mother, and they literally change physiology when they choose a path for their life.
It's like
they
frogs.
They consume something that changes their biological makeup. And in the case of mothers, maybe you don't know if you can actually, if that candidate can actually reproduce until they've morphed.
That's an interesting thought.
Or, like you said, maybe it was forced. Maybe it's due to age. Who knows?
Because that's that. Well, and that's an interesting thing too. One of the sisters wants to be a mother, so she is choosing to want to be a mother. It's not like there's this big ritual and they go through and test you out and this is a good candidate for motherhood. This candidate will be a perfect breeder for our future generations. It just seems like, I want to be, so I'm going to be.
Yeah, it very much seems that they just get a choice. And in the previous verse, Xivu describes it as Savathun wants to eat the jelly and become a mother when she turns 4. So it sounds like maybe it's literally just you eat this thing that starts the transformation, and that's it.
Yep.
So the other thing we see here, by nature of her being sterile, not only can she live long, but she does not have any children. So she is saying that puts her in a position to look above personal attachments and view kind of the big picture of their species as a whole, not just not just the osmium court, but the species of the krill, because the helium drinkers are krill, just of a different look. And presumably the other races, the bone plaza and the star cutters, since they're all described as coming from the same planet, I think they're all krill, but just different cultures of krill.
Sure.
Similar to humans, and how you could compare South America and Africa and Europe and Asia are all different, but they're all still human kind of thing.
Right.
So she believes, Tauix believes, that the king has gone mad. He's ignoring his duties. He is instead consumed with these ancient texts, which I assume are his life's work that Arash refers to in the first verse, regarding the past of their people. And he's now talking about moons above the storm. And he speaks to a familiar, which is a dead white worm from the deep sea. All of that has potential connections. We'll talk about the moons later because they definitely have a connection. But the white worm is interesting because I don't know exactly what it is. And that
was going to be my ultimate question: is what is this white worm? Like,
yeah, and we'll see as we read through, becomes more prevalent. But I don't think we ever get a concrete answer on what the white worm is.
Interesting.
So we'll have to keep that in mind as it shows up.
Because is it just like a husk? Is it?
She refers to it as a dead white worm. However, we know that it speaks later on, so it has a sentience. And
Well, and
we know,
here's a question for you: does it speak, or is it like the traveler speaks, right? Like how the speaker says, "Well, I speak for the traveler, but I never spoke to me."
well, here's a fun thing. I don't have the lore in front of me, so I can't tell you which book it's from. But I was this days old when I learned that the traveler totally did talk to the speaker. The speaker was just making shit up to spite Gaul.
Wow.
Um, but not in the fashion that we would think of as speaking or communicating. The traveler sent the speaker vision.
Okay.
And actually, the traveler spoke of. We're this is our little bonus episode. We're getting off topic here.
As we completely off topic.
Yeah, the traveler sent the speaker visions of it being captured, of the city in flames from a foreign invader.
Interesting.
And it sent these visions to the traveler for months prior to the beginning of the Red War, and the speaker never said anything because he could never see who the invader was in those visions. And he didn't want to incite panic.
So essentially the
against
opposite
an
of
invader that he never knew.
Essentially the opposite of how Lakshmi looked at things.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Like Lakshmi looked at stuff and was like, "This is going to come to pass, and I need to prevent all of it." And he just looked at it as okay, what do I do with this information? Like, how do I interpret this? How do I?
Something is coming that's going to be bad, but I don't know what. So I don't know where to like tell people to even look to try and avoid this.
Yeah.
So is it worth making everyone panic over it? Because if the speaker were to come out and say something, like it is the gospel truth as far as the people of the city are.
That's like everything.
So if the speaker comes out and says like, "Hey, something's coming for the traveler. I don't know what. I've just seen the city in flames and the traveler, caged," that is not going to end well. It's going to be mass hysteria. Another interesting little tidbit about that vision, and then we'll get back to the book, is in that vision, he apparently got he could feel what the traveler wanted to do or could feel like the traveler's intentions. And the traveler intended to flee from the Red Legion, from being captured. I don't know if that literally means like leave the system and abandon humanity, but to avoid capture. And it was held in place on Earth by something. And the prevailing theory that I've seen that I think is probably correct is that something was a member of the Nine. Because we know that at least one member of the Nine defected and allowed the Red Legion to enter the system by intentionally blinding their presence from the Vanguard until they were already at Earth.
You know what it was, right? It's Pluto getting his revenge. Said, "You bitches want to call me a dwarf planet? Dwarf this shit. And then you want to take away my planet status? Okay, all right. I see you a planet status and raise you light status, bitches." God damn it! God damn it!
And this is why the Guardians never visit Pluto, because
exactly,
Pluto.
Exactly. That's Nessus gets mentioned. That's why Nessus doesn't care. Damn it!
But yeah, so I found that very interesting.
Absolutely.
There is a lore book about it. I do not remember what it was because I literally read it in a post today.
Okay.
So I will have to find that and try to reference it later on here.
Well, we'll keep that for our bonus episode or on our full series on the Nine. Stay tuned.
Yeah. That's a good idea. So the other thing that I want to touch on here before the next one is even in their quote unquote infancy, I guess they're a quarter of their way through their lives at this. They have very set personalities that have continued to define them, the sisters, to define them even as we know them. You have Xivu, who becomes Xivu Arath, the youngest and bravest who wants to be a knight. Shiro can fight but not lead. We see her in that exact role now. She is fighting against the Guardians and against the Cabal, but she is not
Everything, like
at the
against
head
the
of
universe.
Yeah, but she is not making the decision. She's leading the army, but she's only doing what she's told by the entity, the darkness, or whoever's pulling the strings.
She's still not fully
right. She's not leading.
Yeah.
Not leading the whole show at least. She's leading her forces, but she's not making the big decisions. And then Sathona, most clever, who wants to be a mother. Sathona can think, but cannot fight. So we're seeing a lot of, her whole deal has been treachery and trickery and, making sure people didn't know whether she was coming or going. Because she has never been she's never been shown to be physically strong compared to the others.
Right.
She has always been, the thinker, have a scapegoat, a meat shield, something.
Sure, and that is also very, I guess D&D, right? Like the strong guy has all the muscles, but no brain, and the brainy guy has all the muscles, but no, like that's that's
absolutely. And I really think this Sathona, most clever, who wants to be a mother, and the fact that she takes on a winged form in Queen, and she is, birthing this lucent brood by reviving them. Like I think she's her original want to be a mother.
Absolutely.
And then
this to me comes down to like that driving force, right? Like we talked about that with the Guardians. Like, the Guardians are Guardians because they have that driving force. Are the are the queens of the of Hive that way because they have a driving force? Like, did the worms choose them specifically?
Well,
I know I'm jumping in our story.
Yeah, we will find out.
Sorry.
And then lastly, they talk about Arash, who becomes Oryx, navigator child who dreams. Arash's curiosity will draw her away. So people don't know this, or a lot of people don't know this, just because it's not very apparent in our dealings with Oryx. But Oryx's driving force was knowledge. Oryx's worm was fed by knowledge, by learning things. And he chose to learn things by conquering. He would conquer something, learn everything there was to know about that culture as he was removing it from existence.
Right.
And when Oryx was still Arash, was still very much driven by curiosity, by discovering the truth, by knowing the origins of things. And so, again, that has continued to be the continued to be kind of their main prerogative, progress
Absolutely.
through everything. Just a quick heads up. I found the book that the speaker I was talking about, the little section where the speaker was in. It is called Suffering from the book Constellations. So for anyone that wants to look it up, there you go.
And that's a current book, if I'm not mistaken. That's a D2.
It's a D2 book.
Yep.
Yeah.
Constellation. Suffering.
But okay. So moving on to the next entry in the Book of Sorrow here. So now we are looking at verse 1-3, the oath. Sisters, this is how an oath is done. Put your left hands on the mast close to mine. Take the knife in your right hand. Push it through your left hand straight between the bones. Now, carve a bloodline down the mast and speak your oath. I am Xivu, youngest daughter of the dead king. I will take back my osmium court and kill the traitor Taux. On my left eye I swear vengeance. In blood the oath is made. I am Savathun, middle daughter of the dead king. I will take back my home and eat the mother jelly. I will raise my spawn on the corpse of the helium king. On my right eye I promise this. In blood the oath is made. Now, I will help make your oath, sister. I will help it too. I am Aurash, first daughter of the dead king. I will chase my father's last screamed warning. I will know what changed the motion of our moon. If the end of the world is coming, I will understand why. On my center eye, I swear it. I will understand. In blood, the oath is made. Thank you, sisters. We have only my ship left to us, but a ship is freedom. We have secrets to hunt, storm-lit realms to explore, and great armies to raise. Put up the lightning sails, and we will voyage far. A lot of this is kind of repeat info. It does tell us that Taux's usurping of the osmium court is successful. The king has died. However, the sisters have escaped and are now kind of swearing vengeance in their own various. I do wonder if there's any relevance to eyes they're swearing on. You know, on the left eye,
sure.
I swear vengeance. On the right eye, I promise this. So I when we see Savathun, well, I guess in the trailers we did, and I didn't notice anything. I wonder if there's anything different about Savathun's right eye. I don't remember there being anything weird about Oryx's middle eye. But yeah, so I do wonder about that. I'll have to go back and watch one of the trailers.
Absolutely.
But I find it interesting. We understand, or we get Arash telling us a little bit about why the Osmium King was so obsessed with these moons, the moons above their planet, because saying, "I will know what changed the motion of our moon. The end of the world is coming. I will understand." So something changed the orbit of the moons of Fundament. And the Osmium King believed that it was a sign of the end of their. We don't know what he based that off of.
I mean, that's kind of like that ultimate, like, you know, I see something strange that is happening on a cosmic level, so therefore it must be the end of the world.
Right. The other thing is we don't know what the Osmium King's familiar is. If the familiar is truly something that the worm gods can talk through, or is a worm god itself, or is related to them in some way, presumably they would see what ends up being what changed the moons as quite a big threat.
Right.
And they may have been trying to use the Osmium King to defend themselves against that threat by convincing him
Interesting.
that it's a threat to him as well.
Sure. Enemy of my enemy type thing.
Yeah. So something to think about, because we're gonna get a lot more in familiar and such. But yeah, other than that, a lot of what we already know. They escape on a ship. They can go wherever they want, and so they're going to go exploring. And that leads us into verse 1:4, which has a god awful chapter name. It is SYZYG.
Syzygy.
Syzygy?
Syzygy.
Yeah. That. Carved to endure by Aurash. So this is Aurash is the...
Don't worry, I'll Google that and see if that's a real word while you read.
It can't be. The High Vengeance. Only She-Ro's bait stars let us escape. Only Sathona's tricks let us reach the coast. But now that we have my ship, I must lead the way. I am the navigator. We may never see our homes again. She-Ro seethes with hate and fury for Taos. But this is my deepest fear. Our civilization drifts on the fundament. The tungsten monoliths, I learned that thousands of other species drift with us, coexisting on a vast world sea, and the tides of the fundament move us all. The timid truth says that we are the smallest, most fragile things alive, the natural prey of the... Tauax would have us believe that our ancestors came to the fundament to hide from the hungry. My father died afraid, not of the vile Tauax or the helium drinkers, but of his orrery. He had screamed to me, Aurash, my first daughter, the moons are different, the laws are bent. And he made the sign of that terrible word, syzygy. Imagine the 52 moons of fundament lining up in the sky. It wouldn't take all 52, of course. Just a few massive moons. This is my deepest fear. Imagine their gravity pulling on the fundament sea, lifting it into a swollen bulge. Imagine that bulge collapsing as the syzygy pass. A wave big enough to swallow civilization. A god wave. I have to find a way to stop it before the god wave annihilates the species. If I could only get back to my father's orrery, I could learn exactly when. So I guess this is the answer to the question we just asked. Why do they think this is the end of the world? Well, because it is.
Because it is. So a syzygy is the nearly straight line configuration of three or more celestial bodies, such as the sun, moon, and earth during a solar or lunar eclipse, in a gravitational system. So it is what they're describing. All 52 of the moons line up in a straight line. That the gravitational pull of each of them causes it. It's like what we saw when we talked about Titan, Last Days of Krakamare. The whole planet bulged outward to an egg shape and then collapsed, and we saw the devastation of that wave. It presumably anyone in the path of that wave died.
Yeah. And when that wave, this would probably be even on a larger scale than Titan.
Because we're talking about a gas giant. Titan's a moon of Saturn. So inherently it is smaller than Saturn by a lot. And we're talking a gas giant. We're talking... there was a guy, I can't remember where I saw that, but he did a 3D animation of the solar system in relative size, where like he put the sun next to the moon and next to Jupiter and like Jupiter is effing huge.
Oh yeah.
Its diameter is like what I can't remember what the actual diameter is, but it's like you can fit like 13 Earths across its diameter. or something like that. Like it's some ungodly number. And so like if you were to take number of Earths that could fit inside the mass that is Jupiter, it's like 93 Earths. I mean, that's insane. That's a huge thing to be out there. And so it obviously its gravity, something that big has an insane gravitational force because inherently, mass is part of gravity. And the more mass it has, therefore, the more gravity it'll have. If gas giants are so dense, there's nothing physically, I can't say there's nothing physically there, but there's no solid mass there. It's all just a liquid or a gas. The amount of gravity keeping all of together and not just floating off into nothingness that is space, into the void, into the emptiness, that gravitational pull is huge. For there to be 52 other gravitational pulls happening at the same time,
all
that's
in
a lot of math.
One location or one area.
Yeah, like if
direction.
if they all lined up on like the north side of the planet, right? Like when we talk about a straight line, it's literally a straight line. It's as straight a line as you can get, with the end point, the beginning point being the outermost moon, and the end being the planet itself. So we're talking 52 moons in alignment on one side of the planet. It's the exact same gravitational pull as that of like a black hole. And that's essentially what we talked about last week with Kraken Mare. Of that pull of that black hole was enough to stretch out the planet to, what was it? I think it started out, when they started noticing it was 15 meters, and then by the time it was done, it was like 60 meters.
It got to like 40 or 60, something like that.
Something like, and then it blipped out, and so then that 60 meters came crashing back in to a spheroidal shape, a spherical shape rather, and that energy has to go somewhere. And if you're a giant planet or giant moon made of water or any type of liquid, that's one of the easy things to transfer that energy into, to go from that to start that wave. And that wave is I mean, they describe it right there. It's going to end life on Fundament. Like everything on Fundament is going to die because of this wave.
Yep.
And maybe not everything, but definitely the krill.
Yeah, well, I mean, anything that's on one of these floating continents.
Absolutely. And they talk about there's more than just the three of them, right?
Yeah, there's hundreds
or whatever. There's tons of them.
Yeah, let's see. Trying to find exactly where they say. I learned that thousands of other species drift with us, coexisting on a vast world sea. So there are, it's teeming with life, and all of it would be gone. All of it seems to be on these floating continents that are bits of this planet, the original planet that crashed into it. The other thing that I find that I want to highlight here is the Osmium King's last words. He says, "Arash, my daughter, the moons are different, the laws are bent," which implies that this shouldn't happen. This syzygy should not be possible, but something has made it possible. Something has changed the laws of physics on their planet to make these things in a way that they should never have before.
Now that's an interesting thought, because you would think in the billions of years that this planet had these moons, at some point in time they had to have lined up. But I mean, you're talking 52 different orbits to line up on a single point.
Yeah,
I mean, and especially if all, like, that's saying if all of these orbits are on a single plane, right? Like, This is a 3D space we're talking about, so we're talking 52 different planes of orbits, right? Like,
yeah, these orbits could be off kilter from each other.
Yeah,
some could be going north
to south.
Crashed
into each other. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Some of them could be going north south. Some of them could be going east west. Like, I mean, how have none of these things crashed? So they're not only are they at 52 different planes, they are also at 52 different distances from the planet in order for them not to have ever crashed into themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to just all line up at the same point. I guess that's not entirely untheoretical, but that's highly improbable.
Yeah, and the king at least believed that it was due to some unknown force that was causing. Did not believe it was purely coincidental. So there's another little bit to 1:4, verse 1:4 that I didn't realize because it's on the back of the page. So I'll finish it off here. We are weeks of travel and many continents away from home. When I'm paralyzed by fear, Xivu sits in the cabin with me and comforts me with soft, brave words. But more and more we have come to rely on Sathona's wit. She will go off to be alone. She insists she must be alone, and return with some mad idea. Steer into the storm, throw down a net, eat that strange beast, explore that menacing wreck. But somehow Sathona seems to manufacture good luck by sheer will. So Orosh is navigating. Xivu can't do much other than provide support. But Sathona is telling them to do downright crazy things, and it's always working out in their favor.
That's
Which is a hint. Remember that.
Yeah,
We'll
absolutely. So and the gear also, the fact that they have fled, like they're just in a ship, right? They're not in any. There's nothing special about the ship they're in, right?
No, they're just in a ship. So they reference it as having sails, lightning sails they call them.
Sure.
But it's just a
some
seafaring
way to
ship.
some. I was going to say some way to travel on the oceans. Should we call it the ocean surface? Like, because they're not diving into the ocean, right? This isn't like a solar winds thing where it's pushing them in.
No, well, and they've said that like if you fall on the edge of one of the continents, like that's death. If you fall into the water, that's death. So
me speaks of either the density of the water or whatever the liquid is. We keep calling it water. That's a brave assumption there. But whatever that liquid is either incredibly dense, right? And so like you just have no buoyancy in that. As soon as you fall into it, you are following, which again would speak to the gravity of a gas giant.
Yeah. I say it could be the liquid. It could be that just whatever the krill's biological makeup is, they are not naturally it.
There you go.
You know, if we want to go with the insect theme, then and we have heard Hive armor referred to as chitin, and if that holds true for the krill as well, then that, you know, typically speaking, insects are pretty buoyant in water. But yeah. So for one reason or another, though, falling in is a death sentence. So my understanding is they're only traveling across it on top of it in this ship of some sort. This sailboat is kind of what my head is envisioning.
So these are. It's also important to say these are not the last of the krill.
These are not the last of what?
They're not the last of the krill. They're just the last of the osmium court.
They're the last of the osmium court's royalty. Okay. So because Tauix asks the helium drinkers, or tells the helium drinkers, like, kill the king and the heir, and I will rule the osmium court as your regent. You know, we will be
partners,
be
essentially
underneath of the helium drinkers. But presumably the citizens still exist for there to be something to rule over.
Sure.
But So now we get to verse 1-5. The needle and the worm. This is written by Savathun. It says, "My secrets carved in my code by Savathun, the right eye of vengeance." 1. This year of wild voyaging, lightning nights and golden days, these forays into ancient wrecks and wind-blown flights from monsters, these are the happiest times of my life. I want to be a mother, not because I want to spawn, but because I want a long life. Long enough to make a difference. We have been at sea a year, and I'm afraid. Afraid we will die out here. I know where to find secrets. I know where vast, slow things with long memories. The Needle Ship. The Needle Ship, carved in my code by Sona, a liar. We salvaged the needle from the Xivu SHVUBI. Shuvbi Maelstrom?
Sure.
Fuck Bungie and their words.
They're just using made up words anyway. Wait for it.
Yeah.
They're all made up. All words are made up.
Let's not go down that philosophical rabbit hole.
Yeah. That just blow your mind.
So we salvaged the needle from the Maelstrom. I knew it would be there. The needle is a gray ship, as long and slender as hope, as unbreakable as time, and older than death. It tumbled through the maelstrom before our ancestors crashed into the fundament. This is not a sea ship like Arash's. It is an artifact of high technology. I know its purpose. I know what happened to the crew. Xivu wants to sell the ship at Karan Atoll, where species gather. At auction, it would earn us enough wealth to hire mercenaries. We could retake our osmium core and send the baby-eating helium drinker screaming into the ocean. But I told Xivu the ship was worthless. Arash wants to open the ship and see if we can take command of it. I know this is the right thing to do. I know, because I asked the worm. It was my father's familiar. I ripped it from him as we fled. It is a dead, white thing, segmented, washed up from the deep sea. It's dead, but it still speaks to me. It says, "Listen closely, O vengeance mine."
They found this other ship.
They have found the needle, but before that, I want to back up just a little. So Savathun confirms for us here that she has her father's familiar, this dead worm, that presumably is the one that told the Osmium King to even look at the moons, to even look for this
The sign of the
word.
apocalypse.
Yeah, the word I already forgot and can't pronounce. Syzygy. So, this worm, this familiar, knows things that really it probably ought not to, or we don't understand how it knows.
Shouldn't? Maybe.
And presumably it is what has been leading Savathun to make all of these crazy ideas that have turned out great, like steering into a storm and eating a strange beast and exploring, a menacing shipwreck.
So it's less of a luck thing, and it's more of a, hey, this thing that
she's being directed. Yeah,
I was going to say, by all appearances and accounts, is a dead thing, but is actively directing her to take these actions.
Yeah. So remember that point, because I want to bring it up before we go to the next verse. But the ship that they found, the Needle, is a gray ship as long and slender as hope, and as unbreakable as time and older than death. It tumbled through the maelstrom before our ancestors crashed into the fundament. So we don't know where this takes, when the Books of Sorrow, the beginnings of the Books of Sorrow take place in like the cosmic timeline of Destiny.
Sure.
But there was a race, a spacefaring race that was advanced enough to make a ship that made its way to Fundament prior to the crashing of the Krill planet, and crash land there, essentially.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of weird, kind of crazy for me to think about, because as I'm reading this, I think of the Krill as like during like a prehistoric time, you know?
Sure.
And now they're discovering like this high tech spacefaring ship, and I'm like,
I see where you're going with this.
it doesn't mesh with my mental image of them.
It's like, what if cavemen found a car? what would they even know what it is? Would they even understand what a door is? There's so
Right.
much of this that, like, how do they? Now, granted, we know that the Krill are advanced enough that they have at least some understanding of something, right? They're traveling on a
they built
seafaring.
engines and
Right. They've been able to build, and not just build engines powerful and big enough to move giant rocks in the water, to turn giant rocks into essentially boats. And not just that, but to also be able to create their own boats and to have their own boats with the sails that they have. And so that there is a level of intelligence there that is definitely above the level of what I would consider a caveman, or and not to insult all the cavemen out there. But the Krill might be smarter than you.
definitely.
So for them to come across another ship and to recognize it as a ship, to now again, we also have to consider the worm, right? Is the worm telling them this is a ship? Is the worm, because we know that the worm is speaking to them, like the worm is actively, and it's using a very particular set of what does that be called?
Well, let's not yet.
Okay, well, we won't go there yet.
But before we touch on that, so you're right. The worm definitely led them here via Savathun, but they all knew that it was a ship.
Okay.
Because Xivu doesn't mention it. She just wants to salvage it, essentially, to hire an army. Yeah. But Oryx wants to open it and see if they can take command of it. So Oryx understands enough to know that this is a ship that they could potentially pilot.
And we know that she's very much driven by
curiosity
and wanting to know more. And so I definitely think that level of curiosity and that level of I want to know more is obviously driving her to want to say, okay, well, can we fix this? Can we salvage it? Can we use it? Can we travel in it? Is it, they know that it is more than just a sailing ship, right? Like they're understanding that it's more than just what they are traveling on right now. So can it get them to other planets? Can it get them off of Fundament? Like there's so many questions that are being risen there by all three sisters. It intrigues me that they see the ship and they each have different I don't want to say wants for it. They each have a different thought of how this should be used. And each thought is very much driven by their drive. The one wants to use it, wants to sell it and get money to get mercenaries to take back their kingdom and say, like this is ours. The explorer wants to say, oh well, let's see if we can run this around. And then the one that doesn't really know anything about anything is like, oh well, let's defer to the better of you two. To use Benny's favorite line from "Oh Brother We're Out There." Well, I'm with you, fellas.
Yeah. So and they look to Savathun for direction to a degree, because she's been leading them successfully, or her direction has had them stumble into good fortune up till now. And
not,
she
not by sheer luck.
Not by sheer luck, because she has a little worm whispering in her ear.
Yeah.
But she tells Xivu the ship is worthless. We cannot sell it. She lies to her sister because the worm has told her, you need to explore this ship and use this ship. And so they should follow what Arash wants to do in this case. And the other point, which I didn't read originally, so this is broken up into little sections where Savathun will list off like carved in my code by Savathun, a subject. And for this last entry, she carves the word carved in my code by Savathun, who should be afraid. So she is acknowledging that like she should be afraid of the worm, that she should not necessarily be listening to this thing, but she has to, or she feels like she has to. She's compelled to, maybe.
Something is. I hate using the word drive over and over again, but something is compelling her, or driving her to listen to this worm. Like it's almost like a. I want to say it now, but I know it's spoilers for later. Okay. Nope, I can't do it.
Nope.
But yes, it's very much a compelling thing. Like something is compelling her to listen to this.
So now I want to talk about the last line.
Okay.
It's dead, but it still speaks to me. It says, "Listen closely, vengeance mine." We have heard these lines before, or that style before,
and we've even talked about it before in some of the other podcasts.
So
this is very much what the Ahamkara and the Worm Gods use. Like this is we've theorized before that those two lines of species are quite possibly descendants of the same pre-species, whatever you want to call it, and they have that noun mine, and that's how they speak, and that's presumably how they have that level of control over what they are talking to. They are that I think that there's something about that phrase, the way they say it, the O blank mine, that it is literally I think that's part of the compelling, right? Like that is part of some form of mind control that is like it's on such a subconscious level of the noun of whatever the noun is of that syntax, but it's very much a control thing. It's a you have to obey whether you like it or not, and it's more than that. It's more than whether you like it or not. It's you obey because you are compelled to. Like there's no you don't even know you're being controlled.
It's almost like a form of very light hypnosis.
Yeah.
Like just by hearing that, you are subconsciously steering yourself towards their interest.
Absolutely.
Now the other question here, and I don't know if this makes a whole lot of sense, but we've talked about before, like you said, on us, where we have this prevailing theory at the moment that Ahamkara and the Worm Gods are, if not, maybe have a common ancestor, or started as the same species and branched off. Because there are a few instances where the Worm Gods are referred to as having wings, which the Ahamkara do. They're usually referred to as dragons. And they are the only, I think, the Worm Gods and Savathun and the Ahamkara are the only things in the Destiny universe that use this O subject mine style.
Yeah. And that's
Now,
that's the lead that to me is the leading point that says that all of the that that is some form of hypnosis or mind control or something, and that all of that originated from either a centralized species or even a centralized dialect. Like
yeah,
it may not be that syntax may not be inherently of the Ahamkara and the Worm Gods, but since they are the only two that use it, and as well as Savathun uses it, and every once in a while we hear it from Callus, and Callus has obviously had that.
yeah, but Callus is a poser. Like
That's exactly like he's doing it because the darkness has talked to him that way.
I think so.
And so I think he's trying to see it he's trying to use it as that, but he doesn't really truly understand the power behind it. He doesn't understand the level of control that is, and he's just it's like somebody who's heard a word in a speech and they kind of know what the word means, so they use it in sentences every now and then, and every once in a while they use it in a wrong sentence, and you're like, you don't really know what that means, do you? And oh no, I totally know what that. Yeah. No, that's the way I think that Callus is using it. Whereas Savathun is, when she uses it, it's very much she knows how she's using it. She knows that it is a form of mind control. She knows that it is some level of hypnosis to control the noun that she is directing it at to do something for her or to follow her or whatever.
Yeah, no, that I think absolutely. And Callus is, because Callus is like a zealot for just trying to talk to the darkness. Like he had one interaction with darkness, the entity, and has been chasing it ever since. And I really get the feeling that he's just trying to like, okay, that's how it talks. So I need to talk that way to be closer to it,
Yeah.
But yeah, Savathun, I think 100% knows what she's doing and how to do it.
Like a Brother Vance level of
kinda, yeah. Like,
I
mean, he's boiling down
the Brother Vance of the Cabal. I like that. I like that.
I like that too. Yes.
He's just the Brother Vance of the Cabal to the darkness. Like he's just like, oh, this great and powerful Osiris. I mean, darkness. Oh, Cabal, darkness, mine. That's canon now.
Yep, absolutely.
Callus is the Brother Vance of the Cabal to the darkness.
Well, and he almost, like, Callus tried to write his own books of sorrow too.
He did. In some ways, he absolutely tried to write his own future. Like
he wrote a fan fiction version of his own future. It was very wrong, or at least it has been thus far.
Technically, his shadow is done. Like,
his shadow's dead.
That's what I'm saying. Like, his books cannot come to pass because his shadow is supposed to be the last thing that kills everything, and his shadow is canonically dead.
Yep. So
that's a whole nother episode that we jumped.
Callus is a huge poser fanboy. But yeah. So this Oh Vengeance Mine. The other thing that so they refer to this as is a dead white thing segmented, washed up from the deep sea. They refer to it as a worm.
Right.
But maybe that's just because it resembles something that looks like a worm. Could this be an actual Ahamkara bone? White and segmented. Could it be like a spinal column of an Ahamkara? Or,
sure.
Something like that.
A spine looks inherently like a worm. Like it very much has that segments, and it can bend and move and twist like a worm could. So yeah, no, and they just may not have because we don't know what. Do we have an idea of what the krill even look like? Like, we've only ever seen the hive.
The only idea we've got is from, if we're talking purely in game, they give a very general description in the Books of Sorrow that we already. The fact they have
the two legs, three eyes. Yeah.
If we look, if you happen to have the first Grimoire book, Grimoire anthology, there are some there is some art in there which depicts what I assume is Orosh and Sathona and Shiro in their krill form.
Okay.
But that's
after this and
that's concept art.
Right, like that's not an actual. Well, and I can't say that's not an actual canonical of this is what the krill look like, because we have no other reference. If that's the only reference that we have, then that is what the krill look like.
Yeah. So it's hard to say if this is, how true this is. To give a description, they look very similar to the we know of now. Just I would say leaner, less armored. Like they don't have nearly as much chitin.
Sure. Sure.
And say it but very, very similar to what we know now. And let's see
similar to, because they even talk about, I want to become a knight, so we know that they have that level of hierarchy. I'm assuming they have wizards. I'm assuming they have acolytes.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they have thrall. Like from the sounds of it, it sounds like the difference between a hive and a krill is very, very, very minimal.
Yeah. Now, the one thing we don't know is they definitely have knights and mothers, which I would equate to being like the witches.
That's what I would think, because and the only reason why I say that is because of the Broodhold strike, where there is the one that and as much as that is a brood mother, it very much is a wizard. Like it has the same kind of basic shape. It has the very it very much looks like a wizard.
Yeah. I uploaded a picture for you, by the way, to the Discord.
Yeah,
so
that's super. I mean, that's very much like a knight, an acolyte, and a wizard.
Yeah,
like that's what the three of those look like to me. Yeah, very, very similar. If not, yeah, but and I see what you mean by less less chitin. So it's a very pure form of being, right? Like a very I hesitate to use the word corrupted, right? Like I don't want to think of the hive as being corrupted and the chitin inherently being corruption on them or even part of them. But that's what I think of it as. I really do think of as all of that as some form of corruption or some form of overgrowth, some sort of almost cancerous thing.
You might be closer with the cancerous reference, because thinking about it, if we look at Savathun in the Witch Queen trailer, she still has significant amount of chitin now, and that's without her worm, presumably. Right. Now we could argue that she can shapeshift, and that's maybe not her truest form or whatever.
Oh, sure, because she could be in her pocket universe, where essentially is. I mean, we've discussed this with Mara, right? Like that pocket universe, anything is possible to the person that created it.
Yeah. But let's assume for a second that the form we see in the Witch Queen trailers is her form. That would imply that the chitin would exist even without the worm. And so maybe the chitin is natural to the krill turned hive, but usually they don't live long enough to build it up that much
for it to be built up. There you go. Okay.
But since they have their worms and they live for as long as the worm lives, it gives them the ability for it to build up and for them to take on that stronger, more armored physique.
And essentially act like a form of exoskeleton armor.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I like that idea. I like that idea of it being. And that could explain why they don't live that long, right? Like that cancerous mass that grows on them, that because it grows so much and so fast, it is literally killing them. So like, again, this is all just theory. There's no hard evidence to support that, but I think that's a pretty good explanation of it and why it exists, and then like your explanation of the worm, because the worm allows them to live longer and essentially forever. Like, do we? I mean, we know that when we kill a hive, that like we see their little worm pop out of them, and we can even shoot the worm and kill the worm. And hell, we even went around the Dreaming City killing those worms to open the box, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not to say that the worms are eternal, but maybe the consciousness is.
Well, and the worms could be immortal as long as they're fed,
right,
but still be susceptible to outside forces, like
to physical forces, to being hit, their head being chopped off, type thing, right? Like,
right, it could follow the same, the same rules as, say, like what's a good example? I'm spacing on like a real world mythological. I'm sure there's a Greek story or something of some god dying.
Sure.
But where as long as nothing does them harm, they just live forever. But as soon as something decides to do them harm, like, they're not immune to damage.
I'm curious. Now I'm genuinely curious as to how long Earth like an earthworm lives.
That's a good question.
They can't be eternal, can they? I know when you cut one in half, the two halves will crawl away from each other.
I think the two halves can turn into two other worms.
That's what I'm saying. Like, can you split a worm into thirds?
I gotta look this up now.
I was going to say, now we got to get scientific with this.
Because now I'm like,
as soon as we ask the science question, and because it's funny. The more I listen to because I'll go back through the week and listen to our podcast from that week, and I have a very scientific way of asking a question or looking at something and trying to figure out how is this physically real? Like, how is that's the question I try to pose each week is how can I explain this with science with some term other than because video game? And that's ultimately what we're trying to do here. We're trying to figure out why this worm lives forever and not just because video game.
So the typical earthworm lives, if undisturbed, for 6 to 9 years. So,
oh my God, the age of a krill.
Although, like, it's kind of backwards because the krill getting
the krill are they get the worm and they
keep going. But
I'm curious, it's an symbiotic thing, right? Like, is it a parasite? Is it more of a parasitic relationship? Is it more of a symbiotic relationship? Like, is it?
Well, I would think symbiotic, because presumably the hive worms have no way to feed themselves.
That's why they need. Oh my God.
That's why they need to be in.
They
something
literally
else.
need to be. Dude, we're having this happens every week. This is it. This is the mind-blowing moment right here. Like, this is the breakthrough. This is the aha moment.
So
I love our deep dives. I absolutely love these things. They make me think so much, and they make me question things in just the right way. There's some movie, and I can't remember what it was, but it's like, like something about asking questions, and it's like, it doesn't matter what the question that you ask, you should have to be asking the right question, and so the protagonist keeps asking these questions. They're like, that's not the right question, and then finally they ask a question, and they go, now that is the right question, and it's I think that way about Destiny lore of that what questions are we asking of this lore, and what type of understanding are we trying to have of this lore, and I want to ask those right questions. Like, it's cool to understand all this stuff from that scientific standpoint, right? Like, to be able to say, okay, well, the light is infinite wavelength and the darkness is zero wavelength, and the two of them combining is like trying to divide infinity by zero, like that you can't do that, or type thing, but I think it's more of I love the that explanation of, a typical worm would only live for, 6 to 9 years, whereas the krill would only live to 6 to 9 years. And the relationship, the feeding there is what's feeding the one, which is therefore feeding the other, and therefore causing them to essentially live forever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, sorry. That's
You're on point. I think that's exactly how the Hive krill relationship is, for the most part. I think there's a few exceptions.
Sure. And I do like that. I do like that idea of that chitin stuff being as a cancerous mass that is, and I definitely think of it as a very hard exoskeleton like armor, because we don't see it a lot on the witches when we come in contact with them, but they are, every single witch we come into contact with is protected by some sort of energy barrier. So
and that would make a lot of sense, because the mothers, those that become a mother, which we equate to a Hive witch, are the ones that live the longest.
So they don't
live longer than anyone
grow
else.
Holy shit.
So I think that lines up.
This is it. This is it. This is the moment. All right. Bungie, if you're out there and you're listening to this podcast, the two of us would love to be hired remotely. And we'll just tell your stories. We're okay with this. If people ask us questions, we'll be as vague as you want us to be, but we will not. We will find the truth. The truth is out there, Mythborn. Also, X-Files, please don't sue us for that.
Yeah. Gonna get a copy of Mulder's poster and put it up in my office here.
That's it. That's happening. Dude, this is starting to make so much more sense about the Hive. Like there's so much more understanding here. That's happening just from these few, and this is what, the 4th entry?
The 5th, but yeah.
The 5th? So I mean, that 5 entries of the book, the first 5 entries, and we already have a huge understanding of the not only current day Hive, but Hive as they are evolving, krill as they are evolving into Hive.
Mm-hmm. Well, at this point in the entries,
they're not even anywhere close to being
krill have
Hive.
Not reached that point.
They're still krill. They're still very much
krill. They just got to the ship and are deciding to climb inside and try and take command of it.
So that's where I was wanting to ask you too. We're just about to hit our 2-hour mark, and I know we started a little late. Do we want to cover maybe one more entry?
Yeah, let's do one more. And the next one is a sizable one, so it'd be a good one we'll get a little bit of discussion out of it. Maybe go to 11:30 for me at least.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
But yeah, so this is entry. This is verse 1:6. Sisters. A register of tokens and gestures exchanged before the end of sisterhood. Xivu, my brave sister, you have worked too hard to move the carcasses out of the birthing room. Come, steer the ship for a while. Take joy in what our needle can do. Xivu tried to protest, but secretly she was glad for Arash's care. She flew the needle ship in cutting circles, down beneath the sea, and their wake rose up to the surface like traitors dying. Arash, lonely navigator, troubled so long each other. I know you love to hear and speak new tongues. Come, sit in the flesh garden room. I will read you these stories I bought at Kaharn. Arash sat among the mummified fans, 2 of her eyes closed, and listened in silence to Savathun's stories. Hungry to understand, voracious to know as much as she could before her 10-year life died. Later, Xivu said, Sathuna, cutting mind of ours, grow low. Play swords and lanterns. But Sathuna was heavy with sorrow and couldn't pretend any joy as she chased Xivu through the needle's glistening hall. Sathuna, pensive one, what is it? What troubles you? Her sisters listened as Savathun said, "Oath-bearing siblings, we are 5 years old. For 2 years we to repair this ancient ship and understand its systems. I am almost too old for the mother jelly, and the knights who killed our father are surely dying of age. We 3 will die here in exile. Taux will outlive us. And Arash, brilliant-eyed Arash, you will die of old, long before you have proof of your god wave or any way to stop it." Arash and Xivu looked at each other. "I wish you weren't so honest," Xivu said, and Arash thought that Savathun had never been wrong. In her soul, Arash knew that the only way to keep their oath was to find a great and powerful secret, a secret that could change everything. This was Arash's soul, her fire and her shadow, her desire to cut through the flank of the world and find its beating heart. "We have to dive," Arash said. "That's what this ship is built to do. Dive into fundament, the world below us, towards the core. That's where the ancient crew died," Xivu protested. "That's where the atrocity in the birthing room." "We have to dive," Savathun said, following the whispers of her familiar. "In the world beneath us is the metallic depth. I hope we may find what we need most. More time, more life." And that's the end of that one. So
something horrendous happened to this crew as they dive down.
Something horrendous. Well, not only to the crew, but whatever it was in this birthing room.
Yeah.
Which we have no information to guess what that was all about, other than this one
hell
entry
is a
so far.
birthing room in this? We have no idea what the crew was. Like, we don't have a race or a species or anything to reference off of.
Could very well have not been humanoid.
That's, I mean, something, right? Like, to me, a birthing room, like that. Obviously, a birthing room could conjure many different ideas. The first one to me, I think, a very alien-like, right? Like
yeah,
tons of eggs everywhere and literally being hatched out of eggs, or it could even be like a cloning type facility, right? Like, so this could be where the clones of the offspring clone are being born, or it could just be as simple as like, a labor room in the OR of a hospital, right? Or not the OR, like in the shoot, words are hard. It could be just a labor room, like in the hospital, right? Like they could just have chairs with stirrups and tables and so yeah, like but something crazy happened in here. Like, it talks about them all being mummified.
Yeah, and this is there's a lot here that is weird.
Yeah.
So the first thing is the needle is huge.
Right.
If it has halls that they can be chasing each other around in, like this is a big ship. This is not
Huge
just a cockpit.
Yeah. No, this is very much like, I hesitate to use the word, but possibly spaceship size, like interstellar travel.
Yeah, but well, definitely interstellar travel, because this ship came from somewhere.
Right.
Came to Fundament.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came to Fundament before the Krill did.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting is that, we don't know how trustworthy this familiar is, but the familiar has told Savathun that this ship was built to go to the core of the planet. This ship was purpose built to to get to the center of Fundament.
Okay, so let's make a few scientific points here then. If it's built and designed to go into the core of a gas giant, we're talking more submarine-like then. We're talking more. The ship has to be able to withstand the pressures of not only the liquid that is the oceans of Fundament, but also the gravitational pressure of the gas giant, right? Like this thing has to be crazy strong. Like whatever it's made out of is like, it's got to be like the strongest material ever, right? To be able to withstand these types of pressures that it is going to come against traveling to the center of a gas giant. It's got to be airtight, right? Because it's since it's able to go underwater, presumably and again, we say the term underwater. It's designed to go under liquid, whatever that liquid of the
under the surface of this planet
of the ocean, right? And so it has to be airtight because otherwise, it would leak and everything inside would drown and da 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 da. So to me, it may be less of a, and so like I'm curious if it actually crash landed there. I know the worm says that it crash landed there, or if it was purposely built on the surface of that planet.
The planet didn't have a surface though until Krill's homeworld
crashed into it, and now there are islands that are floating around with engines attached to them.
Now that isn't to say that it couldn't have been built on one of the many orbiting the planet for the purpose of drilling in.
Okay. Now that's a thought there too. So the fact that this could be a commercial type thing, right? Like they are trying to drill to the center of the thing to see what minerals would be. That's an interesting thought.
Maybe we, at the end of the day, we just don't know innovation.
Right. There's no definitive thing of what this needle is. Like, silly question. Do we even know if Needle is the actual name of this ship, or is this just a ship with the name that they have given it?
So here's a little bit of mind blowing. We may not only know what the name of the Needle ship is, we may actually be able to use it in game.
Get the Frank out of here.
So I thought this description sounded kind of familiar, and the name Needle made me think of a particular ship. So I looked it up in Ishtar Collective as we were talking.
And am I going to get my mind blown again? Is this going to be the second mind blowing of the night?
Maybe. So back in the verse 1.5, they describe the ship as a gray ship, long and slender, unbreakable as time, and older than death. So with that description in mind, I point to, and here, I'll just do a.
I was going to say, if you put a link in here, and I'd lose my mind over this thing. If you're going to pull up a picture of this thing, aren't you?
So that points to this. Makes me think of this ship, which is the Black Peregrine, and the flavor text on the Black Peregrine reads, "I am the needle that threads the fabric of time."
Shit.
Now, it's not definitive evidence by any means, but
it's pretty damn close.
There's a lot of coincidence.
If we oh shit, this might be it. This might be.
So this
and it may not be the needle. It may be a sister ship, or this could have been a fleet of needles.
Maybe.
But the fact that it says it threads the fabric of time, this could genuinely be some form of Vex time travel bullshit.
Well, and the fact that it's described as being as unbreakable as time and older than death. I don't know if there's any reference to the Black Peregrine ship outside of the fact that outside of the ship itself. I don't believe there is. If I do a search, Star Collective, there is not. But I don't even know if it's Vex related per se. It's possible.
The only reason why I say Vex related is because of time travel. But
well,
it could. The fact that it says it's a needle that threads the fabric of time is where that's where it brings me to Vex. But it could just be that this ship is literally that freaking old. Like there's something about this ship that keeps that it sustains itself or something. Like it just can't deteriorate. I mean, the fact that it can withstand the pressures of a gas giant traveling to the center of it, this thing is sturdy AF, right? Like this is this is a gnarly ass ship. Like this is so. I mean, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be improbable that this is the same ship.
So
maybe highly unlikely. Maybe I don't know.
I don't want to claim it's the same ship, but it seems like there's a lot of. It's long, silver. You know, the fact it's referred to in its flavor text as the needle that threads time just seems like there's a lot lining up there.
I almost want to try to find a better picture of it.
I mean, you can click on the link I sent. That'll take you to the
and that's what I've been looking at. And
or bring it up in game, I suppose, if you happen to have that around, or after we're done here.
Just so I have a bigger picture to.
And I guess so. I think that's a good spot to stop for the Book of Sorrow, for tonight. However, I wanna give a here. I don't think the Black Peregrine, or time travel in general, is necessarily Vex related. I am under the belief that Vex do not actually travel through time.
Right. They just happen to exist in all instances of time, which is what allows them to appear to time travel. It's not that they are actually time traveling. For them, it's just phasing. It's
yeah.
I'll describe this in a.
So the way that I've seen it theorized, and I think makes sense, is that the Vex exist at all. The Vex physically exist at all points in time within the Sol system, at least. But the Vex network is not temporally bound.
Yes.
And so the network, the Vex network, can through simulation foresee events through prediction, and that allows the network to dictate where and when Vex should physically be at any given time to move the timeline in the way that their collective sees as beneficial.
Absolutely.
I'm
this 100% with you on this one. This is definitely I like that I at first I thought of it as like a phasing issue, and I still like that idea of the phasing, right? Like maybe they do exist at all points in time, like they genuinely do, but they are able to phase in and out of wherever they need to be. But I think of it might not be as simple as phasing. It may be the network idea. I really like that idea of the network being non-temporal and them being able to use the network as a means to, it's what to us on the outside looks like they just appear out of nowhere, but they're not appearing out of nowhere. They are just manifesting physically at that specific time.
Right.
Because whatever they've been looking at, whatever they've been researching in their prediction engines and their prediction machines, because we know that they have hundreds of they've got to have billions of those, right? Like that's the whole way that Lakshmi screws around and tries to see the features. They have a Vex prediction machine, and the Vanguard are like, you should not use this, and Lakshmi's like, it'll be fine.
It'll be cool. Yeah.
It'll be cool, brah. Like everything cool. It's fine.
Well, and I think the Vex, and that this is I'm a little more shaky on this part of this theory. I don't know that the Vex are necessarily phasing. I think it's actually simpler than that. So the Vex that we encounter that we as the Guardian deal with, I don't think are coming from other times. I think those Vex are just doing essentially short range or maybe long range teleportation.
Okay.
So if we follow this
Very
theory,
much like a transmat, right?
Yeah. So not necessarily that they're coming from somewhere else in time; they're just coming from a different location in the same time.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is that if we follow the theory that the network is temporal and can foresee the future and is dictating where Vex should be based on its predictions of that future, the one thing that the network and the Vex cannot predict is a paracausal being.
Right.
So the Vex showing up to combat a Guardian at any given point, I think, is the network trying to correct an error that it can't understand, aka the Guardian.
Holy shit.
So it's moving them because it, originally had them at one location because that's what its prediction said, but there's an anomaly in its data, and the network is telling those Vex move to this location to deal with that anomaly. They die because we're awesome.
And holy shit.
That's my interpretation of what's going on.
That is so much of a better understanding than they just phase in or out. Or that Myth, you might be smarter than me. Damn it.
I just read a lot.
I can theorize all day long. Holy shit. That is definitely, dude, I'm words.
Now, I think it's been proven that the Vex absolutely can time travel and phase in and out of different timelines within their own constructs, such as the Vault of Glass.
I was going to say they have to be within whatever they have built for that purposes. And so in that instance, they're not necessarily moving forward or backwards in time. They are just moving forward and backwards in that specific creation of time, like that prediction engine form of time. Like they're moving forward in that. In everything that they're moving quote unquote forward in is because this has happened and this has happened and this has happened, and they've predicted those by using whatever algorithms that they have to predict that mathematically, and then they say, okay, well, let's just fast forward to point Z and reassess type thing. Like, and that I like that better than just they can time travel.
Mm-hmm.
Because that has a more, it's less time travel and more of a
it's more computation,
right,
which I think is more what the Vex actually are.
Yeah, and that to me would play more. I say play more. That to me would have a lot more explanation into how they work and what they are. And for them to have multiple engines of this, I mean, hell, they've got the Vault of Glass. They've got they had the entire
Forest.
planet of Mercury. They had the Pyramidium on Io. They have the Nexus on Europa. So these are multiple facilities that they are using that have insanely similar structures, right?
That are connected. In a lot of cases, the Vault of Glass and the Pyramidium directly connect to each other.
Absolutely, and
via a Vex gate, which does not take you anywhere in time. It only takes you somewhere. It takes you to a different location. It's purely a transporter.
I think this is weird that we started out as an explanation of the beginning of the Krill, and now we have a even higher understanding of the Vex.
So, the bonus episode number 2?
8, 7, 13? I don't freaking know. Like, we never, as much as we try to stick to a single topic, and we're usually really, really good about it, every once in a while there's these little, like, threads that, like, you start pulling on it, and it starts, like, it like the thread of a stitch on a shirt, right? Like you start pulling on it, and then all of a sudden you don't have a sleeve anymore. But then you're still pulling on it, and then all of a sudden you don't have like half your shirt or something like that. I don't know. It's interesting how certain threads lead into certain threads. But looking at this ship, looking at pictures of this black peregrine.
I think peregrine. I assume like peregrine as in a falcon, maybe peregrine falcon.
Oh, okay, sure. Being a bird of some sort. Okay, I'm following that.
Which also, if we're following along the whole, the needle was meant to dive. I'm pretty sure the peregrine falcon, the highest, can reach the highest speeds while diving. Which
I think that
another connection.
If this is not the exact same ship, I am the needle that threads the fabric of time. That text is what is keeping me held on to the idea that this is the same ship.
Yeah. And that's really the only big connecting factor. The look of it being close or could be what's described, and then just the flavor text, the fact they refer to it as the needle that travels fabric.
I want to look at a bigger version of it somewhere if I can find one to see if I can make some type of discernible, like, is this a cockpit area or is this a bridge area?
Yeah, well, if you even if you don't have it, you should still be able to inspect it through collections in game.
Yes, I will go look at that at the end of this episode.
Yeah, and it's hard to garner size from the in-game models.
It really is.
Because in some cases they look small, but then when they talk about them in different lore cards, they have like cargo bay areas and things.
They're huge.
So it's
and even when you see it in space, there's one ship I saw earlier today that I thought of it as a very, very small ship, but then like when you see it on the loading screen, it's like half the damn loading screen. Like it's huge.
Yeah.
And even that's not the loading screen where you're just sitting in orbit, but like when you're loading into a zone and somebody else, like you see somebody else's ship on the screen, that thing's wingspan was massive. But then like I look at something like the bomber that should be, in my thought, freaking huge.
Mm-hmm.
But everywhere you see it in game, it's a moderate size. It's not bad. So yeah, it is very hard to. Man, I really want to look at this. Okay, I'll look at it after the episode.
But yeah, so that's I guess our little bonus. So Black Peregrine may vary the needle, or at least something very close.
But then how did it get to us? Why do we
have
access
Eververse? The same way we have access to Andrel Brask's old ship and Cade's old ship, and the prototypes that Elsie Bray made.
Fucking what's his fate? What is it?
Fenchurch.
Fenchurch
went to Fundament and dug up this fucking ship. And
I
want to
do an episode. Okay, so that brings up another question. Where the hell is Fundament?
That we don't know. Outside our solar system, clearly.
So you say it's outside our heliopause, like it's past the edge of our universe or our solar system.
Oh yes.
I'm assuming it's in the Milky Way galaxy.
Presumably. We may find some more details. To not an exact location, but some more details as to exactly how far away it may be as we read through. Because it talks about some of their conquests outside of Fundament.
Sure.
And I think that might give us some reference as to how far they may have traveled.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is a. I feel like this is a very silly question because I feel like I already know the answer to this. We from Earth have looked at other galaxies.
Yeah.
Correct. We've used telescopes and cameras and whatnot to look past the Milky Way to see other galaxies, right? Like I'm not crazy in that thinking, am I?
No, I don't think you're crazy at all. Let me find
That's a lie.
Some exact. Let me see if I can find some supporting information, because the first thing that comes to mind for me, you can view the Horsehead Nebula.
Yeah.
But I guess I don't know if that's its own galaxy.
Is it its own galaxy, or is it just a nebula within the Milky Way galaxy?
But I feel like we have been able.
But on a totally related note, I know I'm crazy, but this isn't the reason why I'm crazy.
Yes, we can. So I should have known this. Andromeda is its own galaxy.
There you go.
As apparently there's a few that we can see, both with and without a telescope.
There you go.
So yes.
Okay, so it's not completely unheard of, or it's not a completely foreign idea that they could be from another galaxy.
Absolutely. I mean, if it all just depends on if they had a means of travel to take them across other galaxies, and I would say means of survival for the trip. Either it has to be means of travel that's fast enough that the time it takes is irrelevant, or just by nature of them being immortal, as long as they could feed their worms, it didn't matter how long it could. They just spent however many light years.
Well, and that's where I think of like the idea of like once you're immortal, time is officially irrelevant.
Yeah.
Like it genuinely like, oh, I'll just wait a day. Fuck, I'll wait 30 days. Hell, I'll wait 3 million days. It doesn't matter to me. I'm immortal. I can just wait it out.
Mm-hmm.
That's and I like that idea too, because I definitely think of the Hive as immortal beings.
Yeah, that brings to mind for me a book a line from a book that I read. I believe it was in the Night Angel trilogy, where there's a character there who is immortal, and is imprisoned, and they're threatening him with life imprisonment, essentially, never letting him out, and he calls their bluff by saying, "I'll just sit here until the rocks that build your prison crumble."
There you go.
Which is such a surreal thing to think about.
Yeah.
But that's an option for those.
That's literally an option for an immortal being. Time is irrelevant. It doesn't matter how long it takes the ship to travel across the galaxies. Like you said, it could have taken millions of years. It could have taken billions of years. They don't care. They're immortal.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like that was last Tuesday to them.
So
interesting. Well, I think we're at a pretty good stopping spot now that we've.
I think so too. Yeah.
Completely had my mind blown multiple times.
That we've accomplished our we could. No, I'm not going to say that.
Do it. Do it.
I was going to say, now that we've accomplished our weekly.
You cut out our weekly what?
Oh, nothing at all.
God dang it! God dang it!
It'll probably come through in the edit unless I take it out. But yeah, no, I think this is a good spot to stop.
Ruin my night. I see how it is. No, yeah. So just as I when I first thought of doing the Books of Sorrow, I never wanted to put any type of timeline on it because I know the Books of Sorrow are freaking huge. Like there's a lot of info in them. As far as like we're on verse 1, chapter 3, or we're on verse 1.3 or whatever. Where are we at as in reference to the rest of the Books of Sorrow?
So we have finished tonight. Verse 1:6 is where we ended. And each verse has 10 sections, and there are.
Please say less than 30.
Please
say less than 60.
So the entirety of Grimoire Books of Sorrow. So
Oh God.
I have to scroll through to find where the Books of Sorrow actually end. There are 5 verses.
Okay. So that's I think verse 5, most of verse 5 was what I was referencing in the cryptolith puzzle for Shadowkeep. I think a lot of verse 5 was that. So
Yeah, I think so.
So we could say like this is the end of part 1 of an unknown number of parts.
Yeah, I would say if we can get through. I mean, we got through 6 tonight, but we did start late, and we had a little bit of an interruption. So if we can try to push to get at least 6, preferably 10,
We might
parts
a 5-parter. we
per verse,
might be done before the 30th anniversary.
We'd be looking at the 5. Actually, that'd be a good goal, is to try and finish it before.
We're gonna try to end this before the 30th. Okay,
yeah.
All right, that's our goal then. So
that's our unofficial. We might make it goal.
You heard it here, people. This is our goal. We're gonna try to cover the entirety of Books of Sorrows before the 30th anniversary starts.
Gives us 6 weeks.
Good luck to us. Okay. Well, with that, I'll start. I'll start our thank yous. So let's see here. I think first I want to thank. I know last week I thanked Science, but I'm going to thank Science again this week because you are giving me a very big understanding of some of the things that are happening here, like just the idea of the engines on the continents, or this needle being able to travel to the depths that it can and withstand the pressures and stuff, and the idea that 52 different moons rotating around a single gas giant, and the orbits that they have to take, and the gravitational pulls of each one. Like that, Science, you're the best. My next thank you is to the Osmium King, and presumably the Osmium Queen, because I don't think they can reproduce asexually.
Well, we don't really know how that works. We know that the mothers are the ones that produce the offspring.
Well, when a mommy krill loves a daddy krill,
we don't know that. Maybe they do. Maybe they do reproduce.
I mean, we referenced them as the frogs, so maybe thank you, frogs.
That would be a very insectoid type trait.
That's
queen bee.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure
Science again.
That's
You're the
how
best.
It works.
Thank you, Science, and thank you, Beyonce. Wrong, Queen Bee.
I think wrong. I'd maybe off on that. I'm not super up to date on my entomology. Quote me on on insectoid reproductive cycles.
I don't think Beyonce reproduces asexual either. All right. Well, now that I've lost that source of income,
she was paying you?
No, not yet. Queen Bee, we love you, and please don't sue us. So thank you, Science. Thank you, Osmium King, and possibly Queen. Thank you to the 3 sisters who were crazy enough, or cunning enough, or ballsy enough to escape the genocide of. I don't want to say the genocide of their people, the overthrowing of their court,
the usurping of their leadership.
Yeah, that's a much better. Thank you, Myth, for being smarter than me and coming up with way better words and ideas than I am, but not knowing what syzygy is.
You had to look that shit up too.
You goddamn right I did. Thank you, Google search, for helping the 2 of us through the night.
No word should have 3 Y's in it.
Oh my god, that would be the ultimate Scrabble word.
Syzygy.
I'm doing next time I play Scrabble. That's it. Thank you, Scrabble, for giving me a syzygy. Syzygy. I can't even pronounce the damn thing. Yeah, thank you to our guest introer, Alpha. I love having other people in the chat to kind of poke us around a bit. Myth, you got anything?
No, I think you covered everyone as usual.
I try. Well, with that one then, from all of us lore nerds to all of you guardians out there, we'll see you next week.